Thanks for joining us on this Monday morning. We are going to be talking about federal student loan debt relief, so specifically the IDR account adjustment or the income driven repayment account adjustment, and how that affects you if you need to consolidate by this April 30th date. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. My name is Beth Groves. I am a professional development specialist with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, or ISAC. And we are just going to go through a few things before we do get started. So we are recording this session. We will share it within a few weeks on our ISAC on-demand webinars page that you can see all of our recorded webinars. I'll take you a link to YouTube. If you're having any trouble with your audio, if it's cutting in and out, or say if you've got a colleague that's messaging you saying that they can't hear me, there is a call me option to get audio instead to be able to hear what we are saying on this webinar, just to call in that way. We do have the Q&A feature available for you as well. So that is located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. It's the little question mark box that you can open up and ask any questions that you have throughout the webinar. I do have some colleagues on the line who can answer those throughout today. And we are going to have a survey at the very end of our webinar just to get your feedback on how today went. Just know that we are not offering continuing education or professional development hours for this specific webinar. So if you have not joined us for a webinar before, just a little bit about ISAC. So our mission statement is providing Illinois students with information and assistance to help make education beyond high school accessible and affordable. So essentially, ISAC is the state's financial aid and college access agency. So we have a team of recent college graduates who are going out into schools, supporting students in this financial aid and college going process. But we also, on our team, we work with professionals to help students navigate that process. So not only do we have that kind of outreach, but we also have scholarships and grants that we do administer to students across the state of Illinois who are staying in state for school. So we have those professional development offerings on the financial aid process, resources, but we have specific trainings on helping underrepresented students, such as students experiencing homelessness or students who are in foster care, things like that. So a whole range of things that we can offer for you if you're not familiar with us as a state agency. So just to get into our agenda, to give you an overview of what today is going to look like, we are going to talk about the income-driven repayment or IDR plans for short. We'll also talk about the IDR payment count adjustment, give you an overview of what that's going to entail. We'll talk also a little bit about how that affects PSLF if you are somebody who is pursuing public service loan forgiveness, as well as consolidated loans. We'll get into some question and answers, commonly asked questions that we see that FSA has also seen. And then we'll follow up with just some final resources to help you as a borrower navigate this process as well. So let's get into just an overview of income-driven repayment plans, or IDR plans for short. You'll hear me refer to them kind of interchangeably with those two different terms. So IDR just does stand for that income-driven repayment plan. So this is a plan that a borrower can apply for. Normally, when a borrower finishes school, they go into repayment, they're put onto that standard repayment plan. So that's designed to pay off that loan within 10 years. If a borrower wants to get on a different plan, they're going to have to go to apply for a different plan. So IDR is one of the plans that a borrower could apply for to hopefully adjust that payment count and maybe get that to be a lower payment, or if they want to pay that off faster, just to see what is going to be the best option for them as a borrower. So what the IDR does is it's going to take into consideration a borrower's income and then a borrower's family size as well, to see, okay, if the family size is this big and they're making this much money, this is going to be the designed amount that is designed to be affordable for that borrower specifically. So it does take that into consideration. And then by the end of whatever that repayment period is, depending on the plan, that remaining balance does get forgiven. So if it's set at a pretty low monthly payment, and say there's a large outstanding balance for the borrower, that then remaining balance is going to get forgiven after a certain amount of years. So we also look at IDR as an umbrella term. It's not just one plan. So it does have several different options underneath it, depending on what's going to be the best fit for the specific borrower. So one of them is the pay-as-you-earn plan, or the PAYE. There's also the SAVE plan. So this was formerly the repay plan, so the revised pay as you earn, but it is now the saving on a valuable education plan. Came out of that debt relief that was under the Biden administration. And so that is a new plan that is available to borrowers. It's still considered an IDR plan, but it does have borrowers having a lower monthly payment than some of these other plans. The income-based repayment, so that's known as the IBR. There's also the ICR, which is the income contingent repayment. And then just as a reminder, you do have to apply for these plans. It's not something that you're automatically put on. You will have to apply, and there are tools to help you figure out what is the best plan for you. So we want to just kind of look between these different plans. There's also a way to compare these, not going through the self-help tool, but there is a way to compare these plans just on studentaid.gov. You'll want to be thinking about, okay, what am I eligible for? There are certain loans that have to be repaid under certain plans. You know, do you need to consolidate any of these loans? What are your repayment terms going to be? What is the time that you'll need to be repaying for this plan in order for the remaining balance to get forgiven? So there is a nice little chart on studentaid.gov. If you just go to the income-driven repayment plan page, you can see this chart that will show you based on which repayment plan you're looking at. You'll see what your payment is going to be based off of. So for a lot of these, it's going to be 10% of that discretionary income. For the IBR, that would be after July 1 of 2014, it's going to be 15%, and then the ICR is at 20%. So just know that it's pretty consistently in a similar range, but that some of them do have a lower amount of discretionary income that is going to be considered when making that monthly payment for you. And then on the other side, you'll see the repayment period. This is a time in years. So for many of these, it's 20 years to repay. For some of these other ones, it's 25. So save can be 20 or 25, depending on which loans you took out. So if you just have undergraduate loans, it's 20 years. But then if you took out some further loans into your graduate career, your professional career, that is going to be 25 years that you would have to be in repayment in order for those loans to get forgiven. And then you'll see those other numbers there for the different plans. So something that you'll have to do on an IDR plan is you'll have to update your income and your family size on an annual basis. So this is called recertification. So this is a borrower that is going to go into studentaid.gov. They're going to provide that consent for the IRS to transfer their tax information to essentially recertify, because that IDR is based on your income, based on your family size, to look at that information that gets transferred over. The nice thing with the new consent piece is that that is going to do that for you automatically. During the pandemic, this was something where you could self-report this information. And there is still an option here to manually enter that information, but it is going to require that supporting documentation as part of that application. Now, recertification was something that during the payment pause did get pushed out by quite a bit. And so it might not be something that you've had to do for a while if you've been on an income-driven repayment plan. It may not be something that you have to do right away. That may get pushed out by, say, a year for you, that you will not have to recertify. But that is something that you can look at your studentaid.gov account if you're on an IDR plan to see when you would need to recertify that information, and you can do that on studentaid.gov. So the nice thing too with IDR plans is that you can do this at any time. If there's some kind of a change in circumstance, if your family size changes, if your income changes, say there was a loss of a job, say there was a new baby, that is something where there was a change in circumstance. And so that's going to affect your monthly payment. And so you can recertify that. You don't have to wait for that recertification date. You can go in and make those changes so that that information gets updated for you without having to wait for that recertification date. You may have to submit additional documentation. It's going to be dependent on what they ask for. You can also change your plan if the one you're on is not working. If you go through that help tool and you see, oh, this one's actually going to be better for my situation, you can change your plan at any time. Now, consolidation as a whole, just to give you an overview of what this looks like, this is essentially going to allow a borrower to combine their loans into one loan. So if they have federal student loans, they're going to put that into one loan. It's going to give them one monthly payment instead of trying to keep track of multiple. It will give them a fixed interest rate. So what that does with consolidation is it averages those interest rates to give you one. That is fixed, so it's not going to change for that duration of the loan. And then it gives the borrower one lender, which can be really nice for borrowers to not have to keep track of multiple different lenders as well. This is something that requires an application. It's not something that's just automatic. And this is also something that is not reversible. So there is a window where if the borrower goes through this process, they get their summary statement, which essentially tells them what they've done in consolidating, which loans they consolidated. They will have 10 days to cancel. So once that summary statement comes, they get 10 days, they can cancel. And then after that, it can't be reversed. So it's consolidated at that point. So what that means is that a borrower does lose access to a lower interest rate that could come along after the fact, because they have that fixed interest rate that is the average of those loans. So there's a lot more on consolidation on the studentaid.gov website. I encourage you to look into that, especially if you are somebody who needs to consolidate your loans in order to take advantage of the RDR account adjustment that we're going to get to just here in a second. Okay, so let's get into the IDR payment account adjustment just as an overview. So this is fairly recent. That's why we're putting these webinars out here to make you aware of it. So just as an overview, it did come out in April of 2022 that the Department of Ed was going to essentially provide some relief to borrowers to bring them closer to forgiveness. So it's going to count different payment times that a borrower was in repayment that originally wouldn't have counted, that they would get then adjusted into their IDR account. So it does more accurately reflect what a borrower has been doing in terms of making payments. What they realized with this IDR account adjustment and why it came out is that there were a lot of borrowers who really should have been receiving forgiveness after that 20-25 years period of time, and they just weren't. And so they're going in, they're looking at and seeing which ones should count toward that adjustment to then update that payment account. So this is something that it's currently happening. It's going to continue through July 1st of 2024. So we're approaching that time as we speak. We're getting closer and closer, just about 2 months away from that. This is also something that, yes, we call it the IDR account adjustment. We talk about IDRs a lot, and we have so far, but just know that a borrower is going to be eligible for the adjustment regardless of if they're enrolled in an IDR plan or not. So just keep that in mind. It's trying to bring borrowers closer to forgiveness with this adjustment. So who is it for? So it's going to affect several different people. This is going to affect someone who's in an IDR plan, or maybe they were on one in the past, somebody who is pursuing public service loan forgiveness or PSLF. They are planning to pursue that avenue. You're going to see a little bit later how those two things affect each other. Or it's also somebody, like I said before, it doesn't matter if you were on an IDR or not. If you're not on an IDR plan, but you're interested in being on one, and you have FFEL loans, direct loans, or the direct loans or the FFEL loans that are held by the Department of Ed. So we're going to get into what it means if you have FFEL loans, again, specifically held by the Department of Education or Ed. If you have those loans, you're going to look and see that borrowers that have accumulated that eligible time and repayment of 20 or 25 years, depending again on which plan they're in, which one they're eligible for, they're going to see that automatic forgiveness, even if they're not on that IDR plan as of right now. So that again it's designed to forgive those loans because they've been in repayment for such a long time of those 20 or the 25 years to get them closer and have that account adjustment happen. So how's it going to work? The Department of Ed is doing a lot of this legwork. So they are reviewing those borrower accounts. If you have one direct loan, if you have a FFEL program, that loan that is held by the Department of Ed, they will look at those loans, the ones that you have. Again, if you fall into one of those categories, they'll see, okay, which one of these payments is going to count? And then they're going to instruct the servicer on your behalf to make that update to your account. So the Department of Ed, they've already started doing this. They are specifically looking at loans that have been in repayment for longer. So they're going to look at those ones first to see if they qualify for that IDR forgiveness outright. And then they're also going to look at borrowers that have an approved PSLF form. So this would be a borrower that has gone through the PSLF help tool. They have submitted that form and gotten their payment count updated, right? It's been approved. Not necessarily that they've gotten forgiveness, but to see which months could still qualify for PSLF specifically. So not the IDR piece, but for PSLF specifically, because there are some leniencies with that. So then the Department of Ed is going to review just all eligible loans. So again, they're going to focus on those other ones first, and then they're going to look at all eligible loans to see which payments and months in repayment should qualify for that IDR forgiveness to get borrowers closer to that 20 or 25 years. So which loans are eligible? Not every single loan is going to be eligible, so it is important to understand what is eligible. So the first thing is that if you have a direct subsidized or a direct unsubsidized loan, those are going to be qualifying loans. If you have a direct plus loan, that is also going to be a qualifying loan. Direct consolidation loans as well, direct parent plus loans, so lots of things qualifying here. And then specifically FFEL loans if they are owned by the Department of Ed. So if they are held by someone else, that is going to require you to do a different step here. So qualifying loans that are held by the Department of Education if they are FFEL. Now, if you have commercially held FFEL loans, if you have Perkins loans, if you have HEAL loans, so health education assistance loans, you can benefit from this, but that is why this April 30th date is so important, and we're 8 days away from this, is that you need to consolidate those loans. So consolidation is crucial here by April 30th of 2024 in order to benefit from this adjustment for those loans specifically, the FFEL, the commercially held FFEL loans, the Perkins loans, or the HEAL loans. So that's why we're really pushing this April 30th date for those borrowers to get those loans to qualify here. Now, for those borrowers who are eligible, who have those eligible loans, they have gone through maybe consolidation if they've had to consolidate them. What is going to get adjusted here? What kind of payments, right? We're trying to think about, okay, what payments did count before, and then what payments are they actually looking at? So now they're going to be looking at payments if you were in repayment status, regardless of the payments that you made, regardless of your loan type, regardless of your repayment plan, that is now going to count toward this adjustment. If you were in forbearance for 12 or more months, or if it was 36 or more months of cumulative forbearance, so adding that all up together, that will also qualify here. If you had a circumstance where you were in economic hardship, or military deferments in 2013 or later specifically, that is also going to count here. So with deferment prior to 2013, that will also count as long as it is not in-school deferment. So we get that question a lot of whether in-school deferment is going to count, and the answer to that is no. That is something that has not changed. So in-school deferment still will not be eligible for this account adjustment. If somebody has been in repayment, deferment, forbearance, again, the ones that qualify here, on their loans before they consolidated those loans into a consolidation loan, those are also going to count toward this account adjustment. So lots of different options that are now going to be considered to get borrowers closer to that 2025 year mark. Now, if a borrower has multiple loans, it is possible that they'll see that forgiveness is reached at different times. So they'll reach that forgiveness threshold depending on when those loans are designed to reach that forgiveness threshold. Now, it's possible because of that a borrower could get a loan forgiven and they're still going to see a balance on their studentaid.gov or their servicer's website. So just know that even once things have gotten forgiven, there could still be adjustments that are happening. And so you might need to wait just a little bit of time to see that adjustment does happen on your servicer's website, because there are a lot of different loans that are being processed at this point to qualify for this account adjustment. So let's talk a little bit about PSLF as well as consolidated loans, just because there are some things to consider here with the account adjustment for those specific things that are happening. So For PSLF, if you are somebody that's pursuing public service loan forgiveness, you are well aware of what this is, but if you're not aware of what PSLF is, this is essentially for borrowers who are working in public service, if they are making qualifying payments with a qualifying repayment plan, if they're working full-time, which they have recently changed to mean at least 30 hours per week to give that just standard of time for what a full-time employee looks like, specifically for a qualifying employer. That is going to essentially, once they've made 120 payments, they will get their remaining loan balance forgiven. So 120 payments is 10 years for the PSLF program. Now, we have worked with borrowers before that have questions about borrowers, loans that existed before 2007. So if a borrower has loans that were prior to October 1 of 2007, which is the date that the PSLF program began, those are not going to count toward PSLF because that's when the program began. They can't retroactively count those things. So it's only going to apply to periods of repayment that are after that October 1 date in 2007. So to give you an idea a little bit more about what those eligibility requirements are and then how a borrower would actually go about applying for PSLF if they have not, or they're wanting to resubmit an application to see what their account is looking like. The eligibility requirements is that they have eligible direct loans. They do have to be employed full-time, again, that 30 hours. By a few different options here. So it could be somebody working in the government, whether that's federal, state, or local. It could be somebody that's working for a 501c3 nonprofit. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a 501c3 nonprofit, but if it's not, it has to be a nonprofit that provides services to the public. So really specific requirements about who could be working toward PSLF, but just know that this does encompass a lot of people. So somebody who's a teacher would qualify, right? If somebody's in a library, they would qualify. Lots of different options here, beside just the government piece as well. The 120 qualifying payments, so that's the full amount. It could be under an IDR plan. So we've talked a lot about IDR plans. They're quite a popular plan. And then the standard repayment plan is also going to qualify. Just know that yes, that is the one that a borrower is automatically put on, but the standard repayment plan is, as I mentioned before, designed to repay those loans in 10 years. So if a borrower pays those loans, is on the standard repayment plan, they're going through PSLF, they might not have anything left to forgive because it's a 10-year plan and it's a 10-year program to be eligible for PSLF. So we encourage borrowers to get onto a income-driven repayment plan if possible. Now, the application process has gotten pretty streamlined. There is a PSLF help tool. So that is where a borrower would do the application. It is available online. It's on the studentaid.gov site. Once they sign it and submit it, and the nice thing with this is that to get that employer certification for having worked for that employer, that's something that they can now send electronically. So it's a really streamlined process. Once that gets signed, submitted, the loans will get transferred over to that PSLF servicer. And then after that 120 qualifying payments for PSLF, if a borrower is approved, they're going to get a notification that the rest of their loans have been forgiven. Now, how does this affect the payment account adjustment if you are pursuing PSLF? So the Department of Ed, they did start looking at PSLF accounts. So that was that second piece after they looked at accounts that had been in repayment for a long time, that 20-25 years, right? But in late 2023, they started looking at borrowers who had submitted a PSLF application to make those adjustments if they have those eligible direct loans. So something to note with this is that consolidation with that PSLF program, right? That is something that temporarily with this is going to reset the payment count to 0. So don't be alarmed by that. Just know that that will temporarily happen if they do have to consolidate that. So they're still going to look at this and adjust each month until they have those FFEL loans that are held by the Department of Ed, as well as the direct loans in the end of 2024, especially for those that have consolidated by that April 30th, 2024 date. So that is something that a borrower can use the PSLF help tool to look at their periods of employment, to look at how many payments they've made. You know, a lot of people like to log in and check their tracker and see how many payments they've made to see how close they are to forgiveness. And then once that adjustment happens, anything that was credited toward that IDR adjustment is also going to be credited toward PSLF, again, for those applicable borrowers that are pursuing PSLF. What if you have a consolidated loan? So for PSLF and consolidated loans, and this is where we have some leniencies, I would say, with consolidating, because normal PSLF rules, you would have to get an average of your loans once you consolidate it. So essentially, they're going to use a weighted average. So if you have a borrower that has one loan that has 60 qualifying payments, you've got another loan that has 0, then that consolidated loan is going to have 30 payment credits for the consolidated loan. So for just a limited period of time, again, by that April 30th, 2024 date, so we really are approaching that soon, the Department of Ed is going to allow qualifying payments with that consolidation to count, right, without using that weighted average. So yes, you might still see that temporary reset to 0, but it's going to not use that weighted average, and they're still going to have credits toward that PSLF under that IDR adjustment. But again, that April 30th date is very, very crucial here in order to get this to count toward your adjustment. Now, joint consolidation loans, the Department of Ed is still working on what this process is going to look like. It's not going to fully be ready until the end of this year, but just know that there's 2 different processes depending on if you have a joint application or whether you are wanting to do this separately from the person that you consolidated with. So there's going to be an application, there's going to be a new master promissory note. So just know, because it's a new balance, that's a new amount that the person is saying that they will pay. If it's a joint application, so both people that have the consolidated loan want to do this together, right? They want to separate it. They're both agreeing to do this, then both of the applicants are going to have to request that loan separation. If it is a separate application, so just one person wants to separate, just one borrower needs to request it, and it's just going to apply to their particular portion of the debt. We do encourage you, if you have questions, but also just to indicate that you're intending to apply, because again, this full process is not going to be implemented until the end of the year, to contact the Federal Student Aid Ombudsman group or your loan servicer, just to talk to them about what those options look like, as well as that you intend to go through this process. Okay, so let's get into just a few of these questions that we have seen from the Department of Education, but we've also seen from borrowers that we've worked with from doing these webinars as well. So the first thing is, do I need to consolidate by the end of April 2024? And the answer is yes, if you have FFEL loans. So commercially held FFEL loans specifically, if they're held by the Department of Education, those are going to count toward the IDR adjustment. You do not have to consolidate those. But if you have those commercially held FFEL loans, or if you have Perkins loans, or if you have HEAL loans, those are only going to qualify for this adjustment if you make that, if you take that step to consolidate by April 30th of 2024. So yes, you could consolidate later, but you're not going to be able to benefit from this specific adjustment if you do that later. So you need to consolidate by April 30th. What about refunds? So if a borrower is thinking, hey, maybe I would qualify for a refund, that it's possible that they will potentially have a refund. That's not going to be the case for every single borrower, specifically if they've already gotten forgiveness. But if a borrower made a certain number of qualifying payments and that went over what their loan amount was, it's possible that they'll get a refund for that overpayment. It's only going to be for loans for payments that were made on the loan that's forgiven. So if it's in a consolidated loan, that's not something that can be refunded. So another question that we get with this is, what if I've already received forgiveness? Is this something that I can get retroactively? If I've paid off my loans, maybe, can I get that retroactively? That is not going to be the case. A borrower cannot be eligible for a refund of their prior payments. This is also going to be for those payments made before the loan consolidation. It's only going to be for payments that they made, if it was depending on if they had a loan that was 20 years until forgiveness or 25 years until forgiveness, more than that number of loans of payments on that 20 or 25 year worth of payments that were paid on the loan that does get forgiven. What about taxes? We get this question a lot because it's a concern that borrowers have about, well, if I get forgiveness, right, am I going to have to pay a whole bunch of money on that forgiveness, right? And so they're concerned about having to pay taxes. So the federal government is not going to tax you on forgiveness. If you get forgiven, if your loans get forgiven through this adjustment or through PSLF, right, you're not going to get that taxed. Your state government might consider it taxable. Illinois is not one of those states that taxes loan forgiveness. So if you are joining us to hear from this, not from Illinois, it's something that you would want to check and see with your specific state to see if you could expect to be taxed for that loan forgiveness. But Illinois is not one of those states that does tax for loan forgiveness. So if you have debt that gets forgiven because of that adjustment, you're not going to have some kind of tax liability if you had loans discharged between that December 31 date of 2020 and then January 1st of 2026 as well. So that is not going to affect you with the debt that was forgiven during that time. So we are currently in that time. And then the Department of Ed, they are going to notify you if they are planning on discharging those loans because of the adjustment. You will have a period of time where you can opt out. So yes, you're not going to get taxed by the federal government. You're not going to get taxed by Illinois, but say that you're joining us from another state and there is that concern, or you just don't want this forgiveness, you are going to have a 30-day period to be able to opt out of that before receiving that automatic forgiveness if you decide you don't want to go through with that. So what about Parent Plus loans? So the Department of Ed is going to forgive Parent Plus loans, whether they're consolidated or not. So I know that there have been a lot of questions with Parent Plus loans and whether or not they qualify for certain forgiveness, and there are some restrictions when it comes to Parent Plus loans. We get a lot of questions about, well, what if I consolidate it? Could I combine it with my student's loan? And that is not the case. Just know that Parent Plus loans, right, they have to be with the person who is the borrower, okay? So you can't consolidate a loan from a parent with a loan from their student because those are two different borrowers. Now, if a parent had a different loan from when they were, say, a student, that's still the same borrower's name. So if a borrower is pursuing the PSLF program, that is also going to count. So with those Parent Plus loans, those will also count with the adjustment because the borrower would have been, this is so long that they were with a qualifying employer. Now, if you have a Parent Plus loan, you are not going to be able to reach that forgiveness through IDR or through PSLF. Then that is going to, you're going to be one of those people that wants to consolidate that Parent Plus loan by that April 30th date of 2024. And then you'll still want to be making those payments under specifically an ICR plan. So this is one of those circumstances where the type of plan is going to matter for the person who has that Parent Plus loan after that consolidation to be able to continue making that progress in order to get that forgiveness to happen. So I mentioned at the beginning that certain plans are going to be specific to a borrower that is able to enroll in certain income-driven repayment plans, and this is one of those circumstances where they're going to want to continue with an ICR plan because of those Parent Plus loans. Now we get questions about defaulted loans as well, and this is where the Fresh Start program really comes into play, because the Fresh Start program is another one of those programs that came out of just relief during the pandemic. And so we encourage borrowers who are in default or have defaulted to get out of default by taking advantage of the Fresh Start initiative. So it is a one-time opportunity. It's going to be for borrowers to essentially take the steps to get out of defaults, to rehabilitate those loans. And then they'll have access to other kinds of federal student loan benefits that they had lost because they went into default. So they'll have access to things like federal student aid. They're not going to have their garnishment of wages, right? So this is something that has been in effect for, I think, a couple years at this point. So it's fairly recent because it did come out of the pandemic. but defaulted borrowers are going to have until September 30th of 2024 to take advantage of it. So they had said you have until a year after the payment pause ends to take advantage of the Fresh Start initiative. So that puts you at the end of September of 2024 in order to be able to rehabilitate those loans and get into these other benefits that come from the Federal Student Aid Office. So joint consolidation loans, there's also a concern about, I can't split this loan before this IDR adjustment happens. And so the nice thing with this is that the Department of Ed has indicated that they're still going to consider this. So if somebody, goes through this process and they eventually split their joint consolidation loan to consolidate into a direct consolidation loan, even if that happens after that payment adjustment, right, they are going to still get that benefit applied retroactively. So this is one of those leniencies as well, that will still happen retroactively for the borrower. So just a few resources to go through before we give you our survey. So if you're not aware of who the current held Department of Education held loan servicers are, there are quite a few at this point. And so Ed Financial is one, MOHELA is the PSLF servicer, AidVantage, Nelnet, ECSI, and then the default resolution group if your loans have entered into default. So if you're not sure who your loan servicer is, this is something that you can go to studentaid.gov. They will say your balance, they'll say who your servicer is as well. This is something where you will need to create an account if you haven't done that already with your loan servicer, and that's where you would be making those payments with your loan servicer. This is an example of what one of those loan servicer website looks like. So this is MOHELA. MOHELA is, again, the PSLF servicer. One thing that I like to just point out with these loan servicer websites is that they will say, this is an official servicer of federal student aid. So it's going to let the borrower know that they're in the right place. They are not, going to get scammed. They're not on a scam website, because anywhere there's money, there's going to be scams involved as well. And so this is an official servicer of federal student aid. It gives them a place to create that account, to log in, but it also has just a lot of great information for the borrower to learn about as well if they just have questions about PSLF specifically, about being in repayment as well. There's a lot of great information on the servicer website as well. It's not just a place to go to pay those loans. So if you're not sure who your loan servicer is, like I said, you can go to studentaid.gov. You can see your dashboard to see how many loans you have, and it will tell you what your loan servicer is on your studentaid.gov account as well. So you'll just need to log in with your FSA ID to be able to see this information on studentaid.gov. I really, really like FSA's loan simulator. If you have not checked this out, this is something that I think is really beneficial in terms of figuring out what kind of repayment plan is going to be best for you and for your family. And so that is something where you would put in your information. You can either log in with your FSA ID, and it'll pull your information, your actual loan balance, to be able to look at that, or you could just use averages as well to see what's going to be the best strategy for you, what the best plan is going to be based on the loans that you have, based on what your goals are. If you want to pay off your debt fast, if you want to qualify for forgiveness, it's going to tell you what the best options are based on those goals. It's also a place to look and see what your options are if you're struggling with student loan payments, but also if you intend to go back to school, you can simulate what it would look like to borrow more, what that would do to your payment amount in the future. ISAC also has resources for you. So this webinar is one of a series that we have been doing. We do have another one coming up on the 24th from 8 to 8:45, so bright and early, maybe before work if you want to hop on or share with your colleagues. And then April 29th as well, just right before that account adjustment happens, the deadline of the April 30th to consolidate from 12 to 12:45. So hopefully on your lunch break, if you'd like to join us, or again, share with a colleague. But we have lots of different resources on our page talking about federal student loan forgiveness as well, just to look through those if you want to do that on your own time. Now, submitting a complaint is something that the Department of Ed has put out a specific request form to be able to do this. So once that payment count does get updated, if there's some kind of error, you can talk to your loan servicer, but you also can go to this specific page to give them feedback. It's their feedback center, to submit a complaint, but also once that has happened, you can manage your cases on there. This is also a place to report issues with the form, suspicious activities, or scams that you might be encountering, just so that they're aware of them. So speaking of scams, it is important to be aware of scammers and beware of them as well. So if somebody's contacting you to promise you debt relief, promise you loan forgiveness, that is not where you want to be, right? They are going to be promising you potentially immediate loan forgiveness, or maybe they're asking for a fee. So avoid them. They are going to try to look really real. They're trying to impersonate probably these businesses that are real, right? Servicers that are real. So just know that they're going to try to appear that way. But if they're asking you to give them money when this is help that you could receive for free, if they are asking for your FSA-ID password, no, absolutely not. That is not something that the Department of Education is going to ask for it. We are not going to ask for that. Do not share that FSA-ID password with anyone. That has a lot of your personal information on there. So just be aware of that. If you encounter it, that again can be submitted on the feedback center. Okay, at this time, my colleague Megan is going to go ahead and open up the chat. It's popped right in there. So if you want to give us feedback on today's session, you will have until the end of the day on Thursday, April 24th. So 2 days to fill that out. It is again located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. The little chat bubble is where she posted it. So again, just to provide feedback, we are not offering continuing education or professional development hours for this specific webinar, but we would love to just hear your feedback about how today went and anything that we can do in the future. If you have any questions, please contact the professional development team. We have a designated inbox for questions regarding borrower support. So we highly encourage you to reach out there if you do have questions that say are really specific to your situation. We're happy to support you that way. Thanks again for joining us this morning, and have a great rest of your day.